Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas, Collins, LLC.
My name is Ann Hackett, and I do come to you from United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. I must apologize. I'm in the process of losing my voice, so I'm very grateful for the microphone today. I think it will help me. As mentioned, I do community outreach, and what I would like to focus on today, as the title says, immigration in a nutshell. As we know, it's a very complex topic, and we could spend a lot of time on it, but we're only going to dip our toe into the pool today. And hopefully I will share some information and you'll learn a few things. So, Department of Homeland Security was created in response to events on 9/11/2001. Our agency is under the Department of Homeland Security, and just some of what DHS does is prevent terrorist attacks, reduce our vulnerability to terrorism, and to minimize damage from potential attacks and national disasters, or natural. As you can see, here is our organizational chart. There are a total of 7 agencies under the Department of Homeland Security. The 3 that I will talk about today are highlighted: U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, along with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So we throw out the term quite often, immigration. Well, immigration did this, immigration said that. But what I really want to do is differentiate our roles so that people understand. A lot of times when I go to an event, people think that I'm there to arrest them, but I'm not. USCIS is strictly administrative in nature. Our responsibility while upholding the law is to determine eligibility for whatever immigration benefit a person is applying for. So when I say the word benefit, that could mean anything from permanent residency to citizenship, asylum, employment authorization, whatever they are applying for. We also have U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Those of you that have traveled internationally, you've seen them at our airports and seaports. They are in the dark blue uniforms, and their job is to determine admissibility into the United States. So you present your passport, you present your visa, you declare your purpose of your visit, and within a very short amount of time, the officer will determine whether they can admit you into the United States. Unlike USCIS, Customs and Border Protection is a branch of law enforcement. They do have arrest authority, and they can return people back to their country of origin. Another law enforcement arm is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. There are 2 main departments under that agency. We have enforcement and removal operations. They are tasked with detaining and removing criminal aliens from the United States. And the investigative branch is Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI. They investigate both U.S. citizens and foreign nationals who are involved in various types of criminal activity. The USCIS mission statement, it's what guides us. I'll let you read it yourself, but it is what our work is based on. While we uphold the immigration laws of the United States, we also support our mission. So what do? We grant immigration benefits, whether they be permanent residence, family, or employment-based visas. And we'll talk a little bit about family-based immigration shortly. We also are the only agency that can bestow citizenship upon people. Right now, Every year we naturalize hundreds of thousands of people, and it is one of the highlights of our job to see someone who has progressed to the point where they are eligible to naturalize. We also provide information. We're administrative, we answer questions, we have a call center, people can come to our public counter and ask questions. So we're very concerned about providing correct information to combat the scams that are out there. There's a lot of misinformation when it comes to immigration, and so we do our best to make sure that people walk away with correct information. We also ensure the integrity of the immigration system by upholding the laws. It's very simple. Either someone is eligible for an immigration benefit or they're not. So sometimes you have a favorable discussion with someone, and other times you have to tell them, I'm sorry, but you don't qualify. So a typical day in USCIS, as you can see, we are extremely busy. People visit our website, uscis.gov, hundreds of thousands of times a day. We process 183 refugee applications around the world, grant asylum, assist parents in adopting internationally. As you can see, we're extremely, extremely busy. Okay, so immigration in a nutshell. What is a visa? Well, a visa is something that is granted by the Department of State. A person would apply at an embassy or consulate anywhere around the world, and they would obtain a visa. Now, just because someone has a visa does not mean that they are eligible to enter the United States. They still have to be inspected by Customs and Border Protection, that agency that's at the airports and seaports and land borders. At any time, a visa can also be canceled if, after the fact, maybe some derogatory information has been found, or the person is coming with a different intent. So once someone arrives in the United States, they are applying for admission at a U.S. border or port of entry, such as an airport or a seaport. The CBP officer will inspect the applicant for admission, review the visa, and determine the purpose of their trip. At one point, I was also a CBP officer at an airport, and my first question would always be, what is the purpose of your trip? And as you can imagine, I heard so many different purposes. One that sticks out in my mind is a gentleman told me that he was here to visit his girlfriend, who was a Victoria's Secret model. And needless to say, that was not the truth. He was being scammed online. And he had brought $20,000 in cash to give to his girlfriend. And we actually stopped it from happening. And we put him on the next plane back to where he came from with his $20,000. Yeah. So yeah, it's, if you enjoy hearing stories, this is the job for you. So there are various visa categories. In general, we break them down into family-based and employment-based. U.S. citizens have a real advantage here because they can petition for or sponsor their parents, their husband or wife, and their unmarried children under the age of 21, and a visa is always available for them. Lawful permanent residents, on the other hand, they can only petition for certain relatives, and they have to wait for a visa to become available. Just to give you an idea of how long the wait times can be, a U.S. citizen petitioning for their brother or sister who lives in the Philippines, the average wait is 26 years. So you can see that there is great demand. Certain countries, there are more people wanting a visa than visas are available. We also have employment-based visas, which are based on an employer needing someone who has a skill that the United States is in need of. We also have non-immigrant visas, which are temporary. You could be a visitor, a student, or a specialized worker. An immigrant. Short answer, a resident alien, a permanent resident, a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder. We have many different terms for the term immigrant. But in order to live permanently in the U.S., an immigrant visa is needed, and that is the responsibility of the Department of State overseas. How do you get a green card? Well, a relationship to a family member that's willing to sponsor you. As I mentioned, U.S. citizens can sponsor certain family members. And permanent residents, they can also apply for relatives, but they cannot apply for their parents like the U.S. citizen can. So relationship to an employer willing to sponsor you if you qualify as a refugee or asylee. The main difference between a refugee and an asylee is that a refugee enters the United States with that status. An asylee is already in the United States and wishes to claim asylum. We also have the diversity visa lottery, which is an actual lottery, and countries with historically low rates of immigration over the last 5 years are selected and people apply for a visa. I can't recall how many are available every year, but millions of people apply. And it is a matter of your name being picked out of the hat to immigrate to the United States. We also have humanitarian programs, which I'm very proud of. USCIS, we work to assist victims of human trafficking along with victims of other serious crimes. We provide humanitarian relief in the form of the T visa and the U visa. Naturalization or becoming a citizen. Right now in the United States, there are almost 9 million lawful permanent residents who are eligible to apply for citizenship, but for whatever reason, they're not. So that's what really motivates me to get out into the community and talk to people about the requirements. The requirements are listed right here. You need to be a permanent resident for at least 5 years before you consider applying for citizenship, or 3 years if you have married a U.S. citizen and gotten your green card from that U.S. citizen. You also need to be physically present in the U.S. and maintain your residence. This is very important. We look at how much time a person is spending in the United States as a permanent resident. If we see that they are spending too much time outside of the United States, it would deem them ineligible for naturalization, and they would have to wait in order to reestablish that residency. Good moral character. This is perhaps what we spend the most time looking at. We're basically looking for new citizens who obey the laws, respect the laws, and do their best to live a good life. Also, English proficiency and knowledge of civics and history. There are a total of 100 questions that citizenship candidates are required to study. Of those 100, they only need to get 6 out of 10 right. And I thought today I would bring the actual study guide, and I'm going to ask 2 questions, or three questions, and let's see how we do. Okay. Okay. All right, this one, I'm sure we'll get this. If you know, raise your hand. What is one responsibility that is only for United States citizens? Yes, ma'am. Yes, and let's just pass that flag over, okay? So yes, voting is a responsibility only for U.S. citizens. Okay. All right, let's try another one. How many amendments does the Constitution have? Anybody? Yes, sir. 20, I'm sorry. Up, you're close. Up, you're close. 27, there we go. All right, we'll pass that flag. Okay. And our last question. What territory did the United States buy from France in 1803? Yes, ma'am. Yay! And you get the booklet. Okay. Okay. Very good. I'm impressed. And our final requirement for naturalization is attachment or loyalty to the Constitution. Part of the oath of allegiance that someone takes when they become a citizen is included, loyalty to the Constitution is included. They are asked to support the United States, defend the United States, and support our way of life, our government. That is basically what they're promising on the day of their ceremony. Any questions? That's my talk, immigration in a nutshell. If anyone has any questions, yes, sir.
Why do you think so many people don't seek naturalization?
Good question. Why don't more people seek to become naturalized? Well, there are various factors. For some, it's monetary. They just can't afford it. Right now, it's $725 to become a naturalized citizen. For some people, that is just not possible. A lot of people aren't aware that they qualify, and they spend years as a permanent resident. I remember one story, a gentleman, he had gone to my presentation. I said, "Sir, are you considering citizenship?" And he said, "No, I'm afraid." And I said, "Why are you afraid?" And he said, "I heard that if you don't pass your test, they take away your green card," which was completely wrong. But he had spent decades carrying around that wrong information, and it had prevented him from becoming a citizen. We also have a language exemption for people that are of a certain age and have a certain number of years as a permanent resident. They are exempt from the English language requirement. Some people don't know that. A lot of our older customers aren't aware that they don't necessarily have to speak English during their interview. So a variety of factors, yes.
And all these people vote?
As naturalized citizens, yes.
So as non-naturalized?
No, they cannot vote, no. If a permanent resident votes, that could actually prevent them from naturalizing, because that's one of the questions we ask. Have you ever voted or registered to vote in a U.S. election? So, the DMV sometimes hands out voter registration cards, and they don't realize that the person isn't qualified to vote. Yes, sir.
Are we really able to know where all these people with a green card, for example, when they I've heard stories where, we can't find them again.
Well, the question was, are we able to really know where our green card holders are? Well, one thing that they are required to do is to renew their card every 10 years. So if they want to remain in a lawful status, they need to renew their card. So that's one way. Also, if they commit any sort of crime, they're going to be known to law enforcement. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Well, if they don't renew their card, what, do we go after them somehow, or is there an effort made to try to find them?
Again, it really depends what the priorities are as far as ICE goes. If they're focusing on criminal aliens, that's what they'll focus on. So it really depends where the current priority is. Yes, sir.
Okay, so does this work? Hello? All right, I'll just talk loud. So we have this segment in Rotary where we have the International Student of the Week, and they come get introduced. A lot of them have really impressive resumes, and we have a lot of employers in the room. And I just was curious that if we wanted to employ one of these young people,
Right.
what is the process? And then also, just as a follow-up, so you said diversity, there's the diversity lottery, right? And then there's the employer-sponsored visa. But if you are an employer and you sponsor somebody, don't you still have to go through a lottery? Or do they still have to go through a lottery?
No, employment-sponsored visas and the diversity visa lottery program are two separate programs.
So there's no lottery for employers?
No lottery for employers. The diversity visa lottery, you have to apply for it in your country of origin. But you can be here, but eventually you have to go back and you would be interviewed by the State Department if your name was chosen. The form that you would begin the process of petitioning for a worker, you would use the I-140 form, and that begins the process. What I recommend, and because employment immigration is not one of my specialties, I really encourage people to use our website, uscis.gov, and there's a whole section on employment visas, and you can see the various ways to apply. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I need to renew my global entry card. Can I do it in Louisiana, or do I still have to Houston?
That is a CBP document. I would go on the cbp.gov website.
You can do it in New Orleans.
Oh, okay. At the airport. Okay.
It's about a 4-month wait.
Sorry?
Question, we have a refugee resettlement program in town operated by Catholic Charities doing beautiful work, and I was wondering if you could speak to the efficacy of the refugee resettlement program in the Southeast.
Well, I do know that Catholic Charities is a resettlement, refugee resettlement organization. I know that they work tirelessly to assist refugees in obtaining things like employment, maybe going to school, familiarizing them with how things are done in this country. I remember I was a mentor for a refugee family, and they were from Burma. And they did not understand the concept of keeping your door closed. They kept the door open all the time to their apartment. And so I had to explain that in the United States, when you're in your house, you keep your door closed because it could be a potential safety issue. But they are a support system for the refugees because once they arrive here, after 1 year, they can apply for permanent residency. But the good thing about an organization like Catholic Charities is that they follow them throughout their time here, not just when they first arrive.
Can I say a word
Yes.
about that? Being the executive director for our local Catholic charities.
Oh,
agency.
okay. Whoa, okay.
Thank you for those kind words. I certainly appreciate it. I would just like for people to understand that there is a difference between an immigrant and a refugee. A refugee goes through an international background screening of biological measurements, repeated interviews. There's a lengthy application process. There's clearance by Homeland Security, Department of State, FBI. They are admitted with permission to this country. So it's different than immigrants who are applying for benefits once they are here. And I just got finished looking at what you were just talking about, support services. I just saw our statistics for the past year. 92% of the refugees that we resettled this past year are all employed. We get jobs for them, and it's part of the requirements of the program that we run with funding from the federal government. And so
Thank you. I couldn't have said it more succinctly as you did. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ms. Ann, thank you for the briefing. We had an incident back in my Coast Guard days where we had a vessel that was coming up the Mississippi River. Someone jumped off the vessel. It's a foreign flag vessel. They jumped off the vessel and got access to a security regulated chemical plant. Customs Border Patrol came and took possession of the individual. What happens to an individual like that from Customs Border Patrol and your service?
Right. Well, USCIS, we would have basically nothing to do with that. No. Customs and Border Protection, they would take, custody of the individual. They would run multiple background checks. They would see if the person had any immigration documents. Who knows? Were they trying to claim asylum? There's many different asylum. Yeah. So then our asylum office under USCIS, the person, if they were claiming asylum, would be sent to a detention facility, and within a certain number of days, an asylum officer is supposed to interview that person and see whether there is any what we call credible fear of returning back to their country. So I take it back, USCIS would have something to do with asylum. Yes, ma'am.
When a person becomes a citizen, are they asked to relinquish their prior citizenship? Because sometimes you hear about people saying they have dual citizenship.
Right. And that's actually one of the reasons that some people don't naturalize, is because they don't want to lose the citizenship of their country of origin. It really depends on the country. I know, for example, Japan, if you become a citizen of the United States, you must give up your Japanese citizenship. Now, as far as the United States goes, we don't formally recognize dual citizenship. In the oath of allegiance that someone takes, they are asked to renounce their citizenship, the country of former nationality, but we don't enforce it. The only thing that we ask is when you are returning to the United States that you always present your U.S. passport. I, for example, am a dual citizen. When I travel abroad and I come back, I always present the blue tourist passport. Any other questions?
What do you think about these sanctuary cities?
What do I think about sanctuary cities? Well, that probably, I think for everyone here, we have our personal beliefs about them. Again, I am guided by upholding the immigration laws and our mission statement. I really don't have an opinion on sanctuary cities. Yes, ma'am.
Organizations that accept donations to help individuals raise this, whatever we said was $700 and something to become a citizen?
Not well. I mean, you could certainly donate to individual organizations. You know, what they do with that money is, you know, up to them. But we do have, for people that are within 150% below the poverty line, we do have the fee waiver program. So those that are unable to pay could possibly qualify for that. And we also have what we call a reduced fee waiver for people that make a little bit more. It's like a discount. It comes out to be about $400 and something dollars. So, you know, we do make accommodations for low-income people. Yes?
What are y'all doing with these tens of thousands of people who are claiming asylum at the southern border? What are y'all doing?
Well, what are we doing with the tens of thousands of people that are claiming asylum at the border? Well, I'll tell you, I spent 45 days down at the border and a New Mexico port of entry, and I saw the Border Patrol work around the clock processing people and basically giving them papers to present at whatever city they were going. And the idea is that they would eventually go before an immigration judge, assuming that their asylum case was approved. And then we had asylum officers go down to the border as well to conduct interviews. But the whole process is very lengthy. People were getting court dates within 3 to 5 years from now. That's how backed up it is. Right now, asylum cases are backed up by 500,000. So it's going to take a while. Yeah. Yes.
Can you speak a little bit about the number? Because I think Louisiana is going to be housing many of these asylum seekers in our private prisons. Why is Louisiana jumping on this? And the conditions, I know, according to some lawsuits, are pretty bad for people who presented themselves legally at the border to seek asylum under our Constitution.
Again, another question about asylum seekers. It's something that's happening in real time. And I know, there are many reasons why a particular state like Louisiana would choose to house them. It's also economics. There's money to be made in doing so. I really can't speak to the asylum issue because I'm not an asylum officer, but I know that USCIS, the Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection, they're all working as we speak to deal with this issue. Yes?
What are these people doing in this 3 to 5 year wait period? I mean, are they just sitting in cells, or what are they doing? Where are they at?
Well, they're asked to, on their own recognizance, return to the court. So what they do, that's of interest to me as well. Are they tracking people? That I couldn't tell you.
I mean, are they able to work, or are they?
I asked that question when I was at the border, and I'm not sure. Maybe our director from Catholic Charities. I'm not sure if they get employment authorization while they're waiting for a court date.
I've worked with refugee resettlement and detention facilities. If you present at the border and you've legally you're caught at the border, you're put in what's kind of like a prison facility. And that prison facility, you're kind of like in a holding period pattern. And if there's not good enough reason for you to stay, you either have to pay a certain amount of money, your family has to put up a certain amount of money to get you on what do they call it when you're in jail and you have to pay to get out of jail? On bail. Yeah, so
Yeah.
you can pay bail to wait outside the jail for your hearing,
Right.
or you can be sent, or they'll send you back eventually. So a lot of it's an economics thing. If your family can afford to pay your bail, then you can be sent from the prison facility to wait in another state or city.
Right, right.
And you don't have, there's no formal process to get job authorization immediately, but you can go through a lengthy, like 6-month process to get approval if you meet certain standards, like you're showing that you're applying for approval to be
Right,
there.
you're in the process. Sure. Okay. See, I'm learning a few things today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appealing refugees from out the international citizens who are applying for refugee resettlement can take up to 10 years sometimes to get in. That's right.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I didn't.
I heard that the process for application for potential refugees to be resettled here could take up to like 10 years. Like, you really wait for that.
Well, you know, if someone is waiting in a refugee camp, sometimes it can be lengthy, the process. I believe our time is up.
Support provided by Walters, Papillon, Thomas, Collins, LLC.